So meme archetypes. We're going to be talking about how memes relate to archetypes. They are an archetypal system, much like anything else. So far I've included memes into my Emoji Mythicon chart, so you can check that out immediately. I'll put a link in the description as well. But memes are essentially mnemonic, and it's even called similarly memetics. Memes are mnemonic or memetic devices which speak in symbolic language, archetypal languages, and so you can classify them into different archetypal systems. Obviously for this, it's the I Ching, the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching, and their characteristic situations. We have the gods, the depiction of the gods, the caricatures in the human physiognomic logic system, the emojis, and now memes. And I'll keep on adding columns as you have personas and characters and other archetypal systems. Because of the way the I Ching is designed, it's infinitely expandable. There's no defined meaning to the I Ching, yet it is a logic system, and it's a flow of energy in cycles. And so each energetic expression, based off of the binary code of the broken or unbroken lines, which is the yin and yang, you get different energetic principles, and these have an infinite number of interpretations. Yet you can pattern different archetypal forms, such as the gods, human face, emojis, and memes, and so on. But what gets really interesting is, like, take this sixth one right here, conflict, Sun Wukong, this face, these emojis, this meme format, or this meme template. They aren't all different versions of the same thing, they're different expressions of an archetype. So I would say that these emojis are analogous. I use the term mythologous to just include it from the mythological perspective, that they're mythologous, and same with these memes are mythologous to this god, and this god has certain characteristics, certain principles. He had a role within the culture or archetypal understanding of that god, and it's the same that can be found in how you use these emojis and how these memes are used. Before we get into it, I do want to mention that, we're used to different archetypal systems like the hermit or the hero, the wizard, the wise man, the maiden, the youth. You have all those kind of universal ones that everyone sort of understands. Even if they're not really used, most people understand them. But you wouldn't watch a TV show, and most people don't do this anyways, and identify, what are the archetypes of these characters in the show. You usually don't break it down like that, unless you're really into it. What people do more, though, in terms of archetypes, is astrological archetypes. You could type in, top Aries or top Pisces celebrities or movie characters, and there'll be a list. So that's a much more universally applied astrological database. But I don't think it's very sufficient or very efficient, because modern understanding of astrology, I think, is lacking, and it's kind of misrepresents astrology. There is one creator on YouTube I've seen that a follower shared with me that is probably the best, or has the best grasp of the astrological archetype. So I'll link that because it's very well done and approaches it from that kind of archetypal language. But the point I'm making is, if you could make this universally understood, meaning you could type in, what are the 8th hexagram celebrities or movie characters or fictional characters? And then you'd get that list of, which characters or people from history, which of these mainstay personalities are expressing this 8th hexagram or the Dionysian caricature. And so that would be one way that, you could format, whether it's you're writing TV shows, whether you're an artist, whether you're making characters for video games, even if it's just the NPCs, or even if you're building the model for create your own character in your video game, you could have the hexagrams, and each hexagram could have its own traits even, but you would basically have a complete system on building the human face within your video game that allows players to then create every possible human face. You just add the sliders to adjust, textures and whatnot. But if you have all of the human emotional expressions, you would have a much more thorough create a character system. But also in making casts or casting characters for a TV show, if you know the characters, you're able to have them interact in certain ways. If you understand the archetypes, you can take advantage of that. Let's show an example of this with one of the memes that has 3 different archetypes interacting with each other, and that's the 2 women pointing and the cat kind of laughing. So the woman on the left here is the 52nd hexagram, which is Janusur Heimdallr. It's the god of transitions, of gateways, exits, and entries. It suggests a duality. And so here in the 52nd, it's her pointing. And so there's a duality which is necessary for progression, but the 12th hexagram, which is set, is blocking it purposefully. The role of the 52nd character in this meme template is to reveal the proper order of things. Usually, or you'll commonly see like a sign. And when you read the sign, it gives advice like, don't do something or watch out for something. And it's set up in order for a passage, or it's for that gateway to be approached safely. The 52nd is arguing for that proper application of that gateway. And then you have her friend here, the 15th, which we'll take a look at. The 15th is humbling, it's Atlas. It's about endurance and humility and keeping the course of things, or authentically denying oneself in order to maintain a task. So here in the 15th, the supporting friend stays with the 52nd during this duality. So they faithfully stay true to the friend and the projected truth, despite recognizing that the attempt is futile. So even though you can see the exasperation, that's this kind of emotional caricature. All of the faces are caricatures of the archetype that they represent. That's why it's a physiognomic logic system. And so you see this sort of exasperation that's like, oh, I have to do this task despite my own discomfort. Despite that your own desires can't be carried out because you're in the moment. The open eyebrows and the open mouth here, and that's represented as Atlas holding up the earth, even if he didn't want to. And so that's why the friend is kind of there in that situation, supporting the 52nd despite the futility of the attempt. And then we go to the 12th hexagram, which is set, obstruction, a disjunction of heaven and earth interrupting the flow of life, growth, communication, and development. It's a discord. So here the 12th is taking that same sign that is read universally, or you have a way of reading signs that we understand. And so the 12th set here, the cat, is reading that sign in a way that is technically, you can read it that way, but it's not accepted as being the proper way to read it, and it usually gives the opposite message. It's an obstruction to the proper communication being done, being interpreted. So purposefully interpreting events wrongly to create a terrible situation to limit growth and transition. And you can even see the caricature is the same. The cat's mouth is kind of open, the eyes are angled up, and the mind or the thoughts are closed, which means you can't tell the ultimate ideas of the caricature. But let's just take a look at some others. Like I said, you can go look at this at any point. So I'm not exactly well versed in memes or internet meme culture in general. Most of these I got from Discord, from my Discord. People send them. All kinds of really interesting memes, and just ones that I've noticed, because I didn't exactly grow up on memes. I didn't have social media or a phone for most of my childhood and even a lot of my teenage years. So I was learning about archetypes and psychology and symbolism and mythology and stuff like that before I ever saw a meme. So I guess I have the perspective of learning archetypes and then seeing first memes, and then kind of learning through just observation and through people in my Discord how memes represent those archetypes, and how you can notice patterns of certain types of memes and meme templates, and how they're used and how they're captioned and what they're used for and what they represent, as well as learning the caricatures of human face in the I Ching and seeing that those faces are representative of the same situations that the meme is expressing. Like you have the Spider-Man pointing at each other. It's heightened awareness. You have the shushing action, which was misinterpreted as from the Greeks, who misinterpreted the child horse to be signaling silence. They worshipped him as Harpocrates. Here's the mum's the word kind of thing. Don't speak about it. Heightened awareness is necessary because you need to be discreet. So something is out of the ordinary, and this can lead to detection. So they notice something, and so that's why they're all pointing at each other. That multiple things are in fact the same. Because the God itself was just that. It was one God that they misinterpreted to be a different God, and they worshipped him as their misinterpretation. And so you have all these patterns and themes existing within the situation of this hexagram that this hexagram describes. And then you'll see more and more when I keep adding columns, the different iterations of that hexagram. Let's take a look at another interaction of two hexagrams in meme format. So here you have the 35th hexagram prospersing. It's thriving and flourishing like a plant in full sunlight, represented by the Dagda, the great god of druidry, agriculture, and the seasons. So here, in the meme format, you have this caricature, and its interaction between the 35th and the 60th, which we'll see is Ymir. It's expressing a desire to grow, usually in context of offering societal changes or maintaining a proper order of things. But rather than grow through natural means, the solution is often unrealistic and benefits a small, outspoken minority without full consideration of the past. It's an example of the caricature in its more negative form. Because there's no good or bad hexagrams, they're describing situations, and those situations can be approached negatively or positively. So in this example, it's not necessarily representative of a proper 35th hexagram or a proper expression of the Dagda or the elf, or that forestry and growing, but one which is growing improperly, right? And so that's what the meme is usually signifying, is something that isn't really making sense or connecting. And this is interacted with the 60th hexagram, Ymir, which is articulating. It's all about setting boundaries. It's creating the form of things and dividing a whole into its essential unity, which was Ymir's body was transformed into the world and to many of the different gods. It's communicating a boundary that has been crossed. So here we have the character on the right. The growth has gotten out of hand and a boundary has been set. And that's why the interaction is saying one thing, and then the 60th is kind of rebuking it, or just says no to a lot of the responses. It understands the broader implications and communicates this to the 35th hexagram. It's a way in which these archetypes are interacting with each other in an endless and dynamic, cyclical and infinite way. Let's take a look at the frog meme, Pepe. So this is the 46th hexagram, ascending, being promoted, climbing towards a higher goal, growth and patience. Apollo and Artemis, they're the duality of the day and night, always growing, ascending into the sky as the sun and moon ascend each night and day. It's vegetation, gardening, childbirth, the hunt, music. The feelings are good while the desires are impractical, the ideas are enthusiastic. The desire to retire from everyday problems, patiently waiting while wishing to escape. Not being able to carry out one's desires, that's represented by the sad eyes. yet the feelings are still good because of the thought of thinking about the desires. Even though they can't be carried out, you're thinking of the feelings that are good within those desires. So it is that kind of, like, the situation you're in is not what you want to be in, but you're able to still think of ascending. You're still, that smile and those eyebrows are raised, much like the sun and the moon raise. But it's that slow improvement, that slow work towards something, and kind of keeping that goal in mind, rather than letting it completely bring you down or take over. So here's another good one. Inside you, there are two clowns. Here we have Barbie and Oppenheimer. So the 59th is dispersing. It's dissolving obstacles, illusions, or misunderstandings, like clouds clearing away. It's a dispersing fog. So Kali dispels fears through acceptance and proper understanding of the transformations of life. She's the goddess of death and time. Desires are satisfied, but the mind is calm and without pleasure. So here we have the interaction between the 59th and the 42nd. Initially, you may think that the dark clown should be Kali because of its association with death and time, but it's not only do we have the emotional expression of the 59th in the Barbie or the pink clown, it is not suggesting that the pink clown is any less destructive or chaotic or unhinged or, zany than the dark clown. It's simply you're able to freely use that energy. It's reveling in the insanity of the situation. When you act out, it's often in order because you feel trapped and you feel that there are obstacles and you're trying to disperse them. In the same way, you have Kali, the goddess of death and time, and often smiling with her tongue out as if she's tastefully or tasting and enjoying every moment of it. So you associate that with the kind of Barbie, maybe even Harley Quinn type of caricature or a Joker. The ghost here or some of these other emojis. So now let's take a look at the 42nd and see further why Kali is not the Oppenheimer dark clown in this meme template. Obviously you could put the words as anything. This is just the particular text that went along with the meme shared with me. So augmenting the 42nd, increasing, expanding one's involvement, pouring more energy into the matter at hand. It's the same emotional type as the 59th, except that the feelings are now bad. The thoughts and feelings deny the desires seen in the world around, as if passion is not required. She was a faithful goddess who constantly had problems with Zeus. She was tricked into marriage. She was faithful but often vengeful and jealous. It expresses a dislike of a situation, and so here you have the vengeful nature. It is necessary to embrace a darker side as the situation has led to bad feelings. One must be involved in a more serious way as obstacles are now forcing your hand. So now you're no longer able to be freely chaotic. Now you have to direct that chaotic energy into something which is causing a bad situation. Right now you have to destroy things rather than be able to disperse those obstacles through behavior. Now you have to focus that into a more specific kind of vengeful nature. You're putting more effort or more energy into the matter at hand. And that's what this meme template is a dichotomy of. Here's the 50th hexagram, the cauldron, the alchemical image of a sacred vessel which transforms its content into spiritual nourishment, offering to a higher power. Here's the Baba Yaga, seen in a cauldron. So you have like different fantasy elements, different alchemical elements, crystal balls, it's mystical experiences, divination, it's transformation, it's alchemy. Here we have this meme template of the ascendancy or transcendency of ideas or of understanding. The alchemical transformation and progression of ideas that leads to its most transcendent iteration. So you can see the archetypes in all of its iterations, no matter what you're watching, what you're seeing. If this was the universal kind of way that we understood things, rather than through other forms of archetypes. But in general, I don't think we use archetypes that much. except, again, astrology. But if we understood these hexagrams, we would have, you can build an understanding of that. Even if it's not used universally, you can still study these and see how they apply, see how they interact, see how they relate to each other in all of their iterations and all of their forms. And so that's what's just so interesting about the mimetic, or this mnemonic pathway. They're story-driven symbols, they're story-driven archetypes, transferring information on a level that isn't direct. Much like the I Ching doesn't have defined meanings, these memes don't have defined meanings, but it's about how you interpret what is put into them. And your interpretation is going to be based off of your past experiences, your views of the world, your own archetypes. It's this endless interaction between all of these different forms, all of these different caricatures of expression and mimicry and archetypal languages. So the Emoji Mythicon, obviously, feel free to check it out. Again, it'll be in the description. You can add dozens of memes into each category. It's not if these are the only ones. These are the ones that I just was exposed to, or I felt confident in being able to put them in these different categories. So it is not limited to just these, is what I'm trying to say. You can conceivably categorize dozens of more into each of their archetypal I Ching categories. And that's what's so fascinating about this, is it's limitless in potential and in application and in understanding. We're always going to be coming up with new forms of these same situations. We're always going to be creating new archetypes. You're always going to have new and unique ways to understand the same archetypes. Yeah, I just wanted to make a video on meme archetypes, kind of just share some thoughts with that. So yeah, thanks for watching and peace out.